5 seconds to midnight of Earth's final crisis, and there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth the stress of nations, the perplexities, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts feeling them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. The wrath of God in natural disasters. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake.
Lisbon, Portugal. On November 1st, 1755, people were preparing to celebrate the Day of All Saints. Never did the sun rise with such brilliance as it did that Sunday. The churches were full, families offered up prayers for their dear departed dead.
At 4 minutes past 9 o'clock, the ground opened to an inferno. Fires raged. The great earthquake of Lisbon had struck.
The house shook with such violence that the upper stories fell. The walls continued rocking to and fro in the most frightful manner, rousing me from my nightmare of the apocalypse as the dust of crashing buildings rose up to darken the sky to an Egyptian gloom. I saw a woman with an infant in her arms, all covered in dust. "Can this be the end of the world?" she asked me.
Over 10,000 died in the Lisbon earthquake. The shock waves convulsed the whole of Europe. The credulous were convinced that this was divine justice.
The sea was lashed to a froth. It burst into the port and smashed all the vessels lying at anchor. Whirlwinds of fire and ash swirled through the streets and public squares. The Last Judgment is here.
And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell onto the earth, and upon the
2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami. Measuring a 9 on the Richter scale, this March 11th, 2011 disaster was Japan's strongest earthquake ever, and one of the most powerful to have struck anywhere since 1900. Because the quake's epicenter was off Japan's coast, a violent tsunami followed and destroyed everything in its wake. Perhaps the scariest parts of this calamity were the ensuing meltdowns at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Damage of the entire event has been estimated at $235 billion, making it the costliest natural disaster ever.
Live coverage of tsunami engulfing the city in Sendai.
An earthquake and tsunami. 14 countries were touched by this December 26, 2004 disaster, and the most serious devastation was seen in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Monster tsunami waves, almost 100 feet high, ravaged coastal cities following the 9.3 magnitude earthquake. This quake was so strong it caused the entire planet to vibrate, tore people from their families, and caused devastation that lasted years. Number 3. 1970 Bola cyclone. This was the deadliest cyclone in recorded history, and it hit East Pakistan on November 12, 1970. 2010 Haiti earthquake. The magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck Haiti's most populated area on January 12, 2010. Hundreds of thousands of deaths were caused by the country's poor infrastructure, and despite immense support from across the globe, over 1 million people found themselves homeless in its wake.
A plague of biblical proportions as locusts invade New South Wales in Australia. The swarms could cause billions of Aussie dollars in damage to the agricultural industry. Some grim forecasts have predicted that the area affected could be the size of Spain. And this in a country that suffered from years of drought. But farmer Scott Mitchell is putting a brave face on it.
Ew! They do have one.
That's crazy.
They're grasshoppers. That's crazy. Why just now?
Oh, look at that.
Chase! Yeah, Chase.
Just came right on my car. Oh my god. This is an absolute.
Oh my god, oh my god.
We had a complete infestation of a
Mommy! Mommy!
Goodness. Yeah, we've been sitting here for about 20 minutes and they're like not dying off. They're still just coming all across the road on both sides of the car.
Yeah, this is what it was like.
هذه السحابة سبحان الله لا إله إلا الله. حصلتها في المزارع في بدع فارس، يعني ما بيني وبينها إلا 5 أمتار. الحين ترد على السيارة. هذه قدر إلهية سبحان الله. نزلت الأرض الحين، فأنا مستعجل صراحة. ممكن حد يصدق أو ما حد يصدق إنها سحابة. الحين طاحت في الأرض ونشبت في الشبك. تقسمت إلى أجزاء، من جزء طاح سقط في المزارع. سحابة غريبة أستغرب. فأنا اليوم صراحة مستغرب من المنطقة هذه، أشياء غرايب فيها أشوفها. الحين طلعت فوق، أصدق يا أخي مخطط شكل الإنسان. الحين بصور هذا. أنا ما أقدر بصور أنا فيها. شوف تعال جو التلفون هذا. جود هذا. جود ايوه. ايوه هذا عجيب. هذا طول قمت. شكرا يا رفيق، شكرا. عجائب الدنيا ما ساك في السماء. يا ريت الناس واضح.
സ്പേസ് സയൻസ് ശാസ്ത്രജ്ഞരുടെ പഠന റിപ്പോർട്ടിന് അംഗീകാരം നൽകി.
Here in southern India, many villages are the focus of a possible alien invasion. It starts with rain. Red rain. The local people were horrified.
Also continuing to follow a developing story out of Whidbey Island, where a huge mudslide has cut off dozens of homes. Comofor's Theron Zahn joins us now live from the Satellite Center. Theron, these pictures are just striking, and a lot of homes here involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Before first light, people living near the slide say they heard a terrible noise, and suddenly one house was knocked clear off its foundation. Right now, 24 homes are cut off by the slide. Amazingly, looking at these pictures here, nobody was hurt, but many people on Driftwood Way had to be evacuated by boat this morning. The slide is estimated to be about 700 feet long. No word on what caused it. The Island County Sheriffs told us on the phone it wasn't raining at the time.
It must have been just moisture in the ground that had accumulated from the past weather problems we've had up there.
Again, one house has been knocked completely off its foundation, and we're told many others are threatened right now, so it's still a developing situation with two houses in a very precarious situation this morning. We have a crew on the ground. We'll bring you more updates throughout the day.
الآن احنا في الرياض وصلنا إلى درجة واحدة الآن عندنا الصفر المئوي ولو في النار يعني هناك احتمال كبير إن شاء الله في هذا فلذلك ننصح الإخوان يعني في منطقة الرياض الشرقية وشمال المملكة لأنه شمالية حدود الصقيع وأيضا بعض الأمطار الثلجية التي قد تتحول في بعض الأحيان إلى ثلوج على
It's hard to get a still shot that does video justice. It looks like the spiders have the house surrounded. The guy filming it just keeps saying, "It's raining spiders." This is pure horror movie material. None of these still images does the video justice. You have to watch. Keep in mind that each image is only a small area compared to the total. They're everywhere surrounding the house. Footage posted online yesterday shows thousands of spiders falling from the sky in the southern Brazilian town of Santo Antonio da Platina. Still do not know what causes such behavior, writes the video's uploader. We are researching and will post the answer to the question here. I know exactly what causes such behavior. A little something called the end of the world. Brazilian news portal G1 reports that this footage was captured by 20-year-old web designer Eric Race as he was leaving a friend's engagement party this past Sunday. G1 spoke with a local biologist who identified the spider as Anelosamus eximius, a social spider species known for its massive colonies and sheet webs. He characterized the phenomenon as normal, which it most certainly is not.
beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause it that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
Ever reasonable to restrict constitutional freedoms in the name of fighting terrorism?
In our opinion, no.
And now the plain truth. As you've seen on our show, the government at times tells you lies. The deception is historic and continuous. The government needs to be exposed because it cannot be trusted to expose itself. We live in exciting and fearful times. Most of you today are not afraid of big crime or big business or big labor. Rather, most of us are most afraid of big government.
All right, folks, there is a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America.
Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever he wants and to throw away the key.
The president saying he can secretly kill Americans and have bags put over our head and have us thrown into black vans to disappear forever. Or look at the TSA and the airports groping people. Look at the drones in our skies. Look at Army checkpoints now at the end of Posse Comitatus. We see the president signing legislation to charge people with felonies if they protest at national security events. You know, people ask, is this martial law? Yes, we've been under a soft form of martial law with secret arrest, warrantless spying, protesters getting beaten up, all of these type of things going on for a long, long time. Now they're telling us torture is good, secret arrest of citizens is good, the government taking over infrastructure is good. They don't deny all this stuff that we warn people about forever being real now.
Well, it's a bill that has received very little attention, but may make free speech a felony and seriously restrict your right to political protest. Just signed into law by the president, H.R. 347 gives federal agents sweeping powers to arrest and bring felony charges against citizens engaged in protests where the Secret Service is present. Joining us now with more, Fox News senior judicial analyst, good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, the thing that jumps out off the page, felony?
Yeah, felony means more than a year in jail. This is not like a traffic ticket. For standing and protesting, the type of thing that for 230 years Americans took for granted because it was protected by the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, has actually been abridged by legislation the president signed last Thursday, supported overwhelmingly by both parties, with very, very little public debate and very little debate in Congress. Basically allows Secret Service agents to decide where there are no free speech zones, not speech zones, no free speech zones. And anybody by the Secret Service can, protected by the Secret Service, can ask those agents to ban protests wherever they are. So I can think of 3 violations: speech violations, association violations, the right to petition the government for a redress of your grievances. What good is free speech if the people in the government are so far away from you that they can't hear you?
Judge, what about keeping our elected officials safe?
Keeping our elected officials safe is entirely different from insulating them from protest. The fact that the president is going to a hotel up the block should not bar you from standing across the street with a sign or with a bullhorn saying what you think about the president's policies. That is not a threat to him, and it is a part of American history since day one that we have the right to speak freely to, about, and against those in the government.
Judge, do you think this is going to be one of those laws that is on the books but not enforced?
I think it's one of those laws that's going to be enforced when the government wants it enforced. The problem, Eric, is it puts a lot of unbridled discretion in the hands of Secret Service agents who may very well say, you know what, boss, you've had a rough day. We'll keep everybody away from you. Or, you know what, boss, this crowd likes you, so we're going to let them, we're going to let you hear them. That's suppressing speech on the basis of its content. And that has been expressly prohibited by the First Amendment since day one.
What dictates the Secret Service is present? In other words, aren't they present all over Washington, D.C.?
Well, they are, and that's a great question, because this law also allows the president to give Secret Service protection to whoever he wants. I'll give you a bizarre example. His campaign managers are coming to Washington to confer with him about the campaign. He can give them Secret Service protection. And then the Secret Service can say to the kids in the streets, you can't shout at David Axelrod, because the campaign manager, because the Secret Service is protecting him. This is a slow, creeping destruction of some of our basic liberties, and the president signed it in secret.
And now some of the Secret Service are going to be providing services for the candidates now as well, right?
Correct.
So
correct.
People aren't going to be able to have their opinion about the candidates?
If the Secret Service so declares, you won't be able to shout at them.
Judge, got to go. The economy's not bad. Sorry about that.
In the United States, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, has purchased up to 750 million rounds of deadly ammo, a purchase which the DHS has not given an explanation for.
Just down the street from our studios, in the U.S. Capitol, your elected officials, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, have just overwhelmingly passed the National Defense Authorization Act. It gives the military the power to indefinitely detain American citizens, even those captured here in the United States.
Right. But Senators McCain and Levin have added this legislation which would authorize the president to declare the entire United States of America, all 50 states and all territories, to be a battlefield, right, even though there's no battle, thanks be to God, going on here.
War on terror is different.
And that would authorize him to use commander-in-chief authority in the United States, to use the military to arrest people in the United States who, in the president's opinion, are enemies of the country. Graham, who supports it, has argued that this would authorize the president of the United States to arrest Americans by simply saying they gave up their citizenship
New questions
rights.
Tonight about an Army combat brigade being trained to deal with civil disturbances in the United States. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 generally prohibits federal uniformed services from carrying out domestic law enforcement duties, except in cases expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress. Critics say the brigade's training goes against one of the founding principles of our country, separation of military and civilian government.
Story on CBS 2 News. If you see a group of military helicopters flying high and dipping low in the skies above downtown LA later today, do not panic.
St. Louis residents, don't be alarmed if you see Army vehicles rolling through your neighborhood this week.
We begin with a story that you'll only see on 9 tonight. The LAPD and elite military units conducted extraordinary counterterrorism training in the skies above downtown LA tonight, and Sky 9 was there to see it all.
Indeed, Rick, what we saw tonight is something you normally do not see over the skies of Los Angeles. We can take you live outside, give you an idea where all this was going on over downtown Los Angeles and in the area surrounding it. Special Military Operation Forces, in conjunction with the LAPD, conducting some military maneuvers that had many people wondering what is going on.
Good evening. It's a military mission in North St. Louis. Heavily armored vehicles are rolling into town, and while they come in peace, there are all kinds of rumors about why they are here. News Channel 5's Casey Nolan is live somewhere in St. Charles County, where he got an up-close look at the military vehicles. Casey?
Yeah, Mike, in order to get that up-close look, we've agreed not to say exactly where in St. Charles County we are tonight and where these vehicles will be parked overnight. The Army doesn't want that information to be made public for security reasons, but we can tell you why they are here. Now, this may not be such a huge deal that these rigs are in town if not for the speculation that was coming via the internet today. St. Louis police first put out the word that people may see these armored security vehicles in their neighborhood, especially near the Army Reserve Armory in North St. Louis on Goodfellow. But that was about all the information they released. On the KSTK Facebook page, in just a few hours, we had more than 100 people weighing in on what was going on, with comments ranging from people saying they would stop and salute if they saw the vehicles to others worried this was the beginning of martial law.
A new generation of surveillance drones could soon be watching us all from overhead. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace.
Agencies love these drones, and they say they'll be able to save lives in things like hostage situations or search and rescue operations. But obviously, the privacy concerns are huge, because they will in effect bring every single backyard in America into the authorities' view. You've always had an expectation of privacy in your own backyard. You will no longer have it with,
I don't want
with
regulations,
these there.
I don't want restrictions, I want a ban on this. Drones are instruments of war.
the founders had a great aversion to any instruments of war, the use of the military, inside of the United States. They didn't like standing armies. It has all kinds of statutes against using the army in the country. A drone is a high-tech version of an old army and a musket. It ought to be used in Somalia to hunt the bad guys, but not in America. I don't want to see it hovering over anybody's home. Yes, you can say we've got satellites, we've got Google Street, and London has a camera on every street corner, but that's not an excuse to cave in on everything else and accept a society where you're always under being watched by the government. This is not what we want. I would say you ban it under all circumstances, and I would predict, I'm not encouraging, but I'm predicting the first guy who uses a Second Amendment weapon to bring a drone down that's been hovering over his house is going to be a folk hero in this country.
But the way that they classify terrorism, they also look at domestic terror issues, and there are those who, there have been memos out there, you've seen them, I've seen them, that have suggested people who have extreme religious views, people who are pro-life. Some of those people could be in some ways considered domestic terrorists. They're on watch lists, or they should be monitored by the government. I mean, how far could this be taken?
Well, you know, early in this administration, Janet Napolitano, no relation, the Secretary of Homeland Security, issued a very startling memorandum, and I remember discussing it with Bill O'Reilly in a whimsical way, but it's really terrifying. The memorandum said people who are pro-life, people who believe in the right to keep and bear arms, returning veterans, people who think the government is too big and the IRS is too powerful, could be characterized as domestic terrorists. Well, that group of people could characterize 2/3 of the country, and this language, this frivolous use of language by this administration, and then claiming they have the right to use force to stop dead in their tracks the people who fit into these categories, violates the principles of the Declaration of Independence and violates the supremacy of the Constitution, which they've taken an oath to uphold. This is all very dangerous stuff. The government gets its powers from the consent of the governed. Do you know anybody who consented to the government doing this?
Judge, I got to ask you a super quick question. I'm going to get in trouble, but I just need a yes or no answer for you. This administration has pushed the boundaries, as many do, on a number of things, using executive orders, federal regulations, going around Congress. And the public often, you know, there may be an initial outcry and then they go along with things. With this, with it going public, yes or no, do you think the administration moves forward and makes this official policy?
No. I think the administration is going to run into a brick wall on this one.
All right, Judge. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Shaq.
The First Amendment establishes freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech. It specifically says as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment can be categorized into 5 different areas. And it's important to know how these areas affect our lives and what it means to us today. From our early American history classes as youngsters, we learned that the early colonists left England to come to America in order to have freedom of religion. Well, freedom of religion in the First Amendment establishes that we can go to any church we want, any synagogue we want, any mosque we want. And the government cannot mandate a national religion or national church and make us practice that particular religion. The second part of the First Amendment is freedom of speech. That means literally that we can speak our mind against the government. And the government cannot make laws that prevent us from criticizing the government or our leaders. Frankly, we can say what we want about our government, whether they're doing a good job or a bad job, without fear of any laws preventing us or anything restricting our speech. The third part of the First Amendment is freedom of the press. That means that the government cannot control the press and control what we hear or see or read. In fact, we can get our news or information from multiple sources. We can have a particular news channel that we like, or we can have a particular website that we like. and that news or that information from the free press, that means not under the thumb of the government, that we can get information freely from multiple sources, listen to what we want, and if we don't like what the press is saying, that we can write a letter to the editor and get that printed, or we can pass out leaflets or flyers, or we can create our own web page and state our ideas or our beliefs. We have the freedom under the First Amendment to freedom of all press, any form that we establish. The fourth part of the First Amendment is freedom of assembly. That means that groups of people can gather privately or publicly, share ideas. It can be a social group, it can be a political group, it can be a religious group, and the First Amendment allows them to assemble and share ideas. They can be for the government, they can be against the government, and the First Amendment grants their freedom to assemble. The fifth part of the First Amendment is the right to petition. That means that if we have grievances with our government, that we can send those grievances to them. We can have petitions put together. We can send emails, we can write letters, we can have our opinions known to our governors, to our presidents, to our judges, to the folks that run our country. We have the ability to petition them and explain what we like and what we don't like. And that freedom is established in the First Amendment.
So I came to my Christian faith later in life, and it was because the precepts of Jesus Christ spoke to me in terms of the kind of life that I would want to lead. Being my brothers and sisters' keeper, treating others as they would treat me. And I think also understanding that, that Jesus Christ dying for my sins spoke to the humility we all have to have as human beings, that we're sinful and we're flawed and we make mistakes, and that we achieve salvation through the grace of God. But what we can do, as flawed as we are, is still see God in other people and do our best to help them find their own grace, and so that's what I strive to do. That's what I pray to do every day. I think my public service is part of that effort to express my Christian faith.
And now, some fresh pickings from the political grapevine. The University of Notre Dame is not the only Catholic institution raising eyebrows when it comes to President Obama. Officials at Georgetown University covered a monogram symbolizing the name of Jesus because it was inscribed on the stage where the president spoke Tuesday. The White House asked for all symbols to be covered at the lecture hall. A university spokeswoman tells Cybercast News, quote, the White House wanted a simple backdrop consistent with what they've done for other policy speeches. The monogram, IHS, which comes from the Greek for Jesus, was covered with a triangle of black painted plywood. Catholic League President Bill Donahue says, quote, the cowardice of Georgetown to stand fast on principle tells us more than we need to know. But the bigger story is the audacity of the Obama administration to ask a religious school to neuter itself before the president speaks there. But a White House spokesman tells Fox, quote, decisions made about the backdrop for the speech were made to have a consistent background of American flags, which is standard for many presidential events, and the suggestions to the contrary are simply false.
On June 28, 2006, Senator Barack Obama gave a speech to the Call to Renewal Conference, where he explained why he finds it so difficult for America to use the Bible to help guide our public policy.
Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith? Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application? Folks haven't been reading their Bible.
Senator Obama After you so arrogantly mocked and ridiculed the books of Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and the Sermon on the Mount, taking those passages of the Bible so painfully out of context, you then condescendingly stated that, quote, folks haven't been reading their Bible, unquote, as if the American people don't know what's in there. The real question is, do you know what's in there, Senator?
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will execute the office of President to the United States faithfully.
That I will execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States faithfully.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The original Constitution, I think it is an imperfect document, and I think it is a document that reflects some deep flaws in American culture, the colonial culture nascent at that time. I think we can say that the Constitution reflected an enormous blind spot in this culture, and that the framers had that same blind spot. It also reflected the fundamental flaw of this country.
Right now, it looks like there is no connection between the men arrested and any known terrorist cell.
Homegrown.
Yeah, homegrown, I should say.
Folks, we've got a very serious situation here. I'm holding what is called the right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate, fueling resurgence and radicalization and recruitment. And in it, we talked about the fact that they define pro-lifers as domestic terrorists. They put this in a Department of Homeland Security document, this official assessment, now saying pro-lifers, people that believe in end-time prophecies, people that are opposed to the administration's position on immigration, those of us that are standing up for the sanctity of life and for the sanctity of marriage, all of those are now potential, and this is what they're saying, domestic terrorists.
It's a terrorist next door that could be our bigger threat.
They call people who believe in the sanctity of life, who believe in owning firearms, who believe in serving their country in the military and coming back, who are very concerned about the policies that this nation is embarking on, spending too much money, taxing too much. It's all listed right here. These are the domestic right-wing extremists.
1 million names under the watchful eye of the United States. America's so-called terrorist watch list has hit the record number, according to one of the country's most prominent civil liberties groups.
That's a lot of people to keep track of. They're adding new people all the time.
It's a secret list that you don't know really quite how one gets on, and you don't know how you get off.
They're coming out and profiling huge groups of people. You know, if you voted for a certain political candidate, you should be considered a potential threat. And you couple that with things like the Patriot Act, where if you are a threat in their eyes, you can be held without access to judge, jury, and without access to a lawyer or even to your family. That's very concerning, because we've watched our country go through and do this to brown people, you know, overseas. They're rounding up enemy combatants and they're putting them in camps, and they are torturing them. That is a fact. We know that.
In Missouri, a new document meant to help Missouri law enforcement agencies identify militia members or domestic terrorists has drawn criticism. The February 20 report, called the Modern Militia Movement, mentions such red flags as political bumper stickers for third-party candidates, such as Ron Paul, who ran for president, talk of conspiracy theories, such as the plan for a superhighway linking Canada to Mexico, and possession of subversive literature. So the state police of Missouri have been told that if you see a car with a bumper sticker that opposes the so-called creation of North American Union, the superhighway, that you are probably following a militia member, that you are following an anti-government radical. If you see a car with a bumper sticker that says Ron Paul for president, you might be dealing with a violent radical. Exercise extreme caution.
We do know that 28% of their funding comes from the Department of Homeland Security. This is not the first time that a report has been issued to Missouri law enforcement and surrounding fusion centers in other states by the MIAC Center.
Previously, there have been several reports, such as the MIAC report in the state of Missouri, but This is the first time that a report such as this actually named individuals. Once you label someone in a derogatory manner, an extremist, a potential militia member, terrorist, whatever term is used, for some people the moniker will remain. Before you can persecute people, before you can incarcerate large numbers of people, you have to marginalize them. You have to create the image that these people are dangerous to society, or they're extremists or radicals, call them what you will, but marginalize them from the mainstream of society so that at that point the rest of society will accept the persecution that might result upon this group. It's been an age-old strategy that's worked in every totalitarian regime in the history of the world, and that's why we're concerned here in the United States when we see this kind of marginalization going on about people who voted for Ron Paul or people who voted for Chuck Baldwin. Now, why are they being marginalized? Why are they being singled out as a potential danger to society? And I think it's shades of the strategies and tactics of totalitarian regimes in history past, and that should never happen in this country.
The people in Washington, D.C. haven't represented what was on the American people's minds for a long, long time. They are the most disassociated, discombobulated, disconnected people on this planet. And they necessarily had to do that for all the violations of the Constitution that they've done.
Just how far are you willing to go before you stand up and say no more to the federal government?
And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him. And he caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was he. And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he hath power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had wound by a sword and did live.
In the last year or so, we have seen many attempts by the enemy of souls to move certain politicians into passing laws that are purposely designed to not only mock the God of creation, but persecute his people as well. In the last 5 weeks or so, we have seen many instances in the media where we see the powers that be are in fact setting things up to make enforcing Sunday laws much easier for the Antichrist in Rome. What I would like to do in this video is share just a few of the articles that are listed on my Sabbath Attack page at remnantofgod.org. This first article is titled, "A Dangerous Christian Movement Influencing Bachmann and Perry." According to an article published by the Daily Beast Sunday, GOP presidential candidates Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry have deep ties to a fringe fundamentalist movement known as Dominionism. Dominionism is defined as the tendency of politically active conservative Christians trying to control government. Or, as prophecy calls it, Roman Catholic prelates. Need I remind you what the Vatican stated not too long ago? They stated this in the New York Globe on December 14, 1930. And this was actually from an official Jesuit magazine for the U.S. at the time. They said the old Protestant culture is about at the end of its rope. Why can't we make the U.S. Catholic in legislation, Catholic in justice, aims, and ideals? Go to the URL you see on the screen now for even more strange statements of the priests and their desire to control all government agencies around the world. This is a must if they expect to enforce their Sunday laws. This next article is titled, "Texas Governor Rick Perry Lifted Up as a God." Running against Perry is like running against God. Everything breaks his way. Either he's the luckiest guy in the world, or the Lord is taking care of him. Is it to be this man that will bring about the wrath of Rome upon God's people, or are they merely setting the stage for a man worse than he? Rome knows, the remnant people know exactly what's happening here. We know they flaunt this man and their prophesied melding of church and state before our eyes to try and generate fear in the hearts of God's people. But have we not prepared for this day? Brothers and sisters, as you see the wicked of the world claiming our God protects and blesses their evil designs, can you still sit idly by? Or are you prepared to do as our God prophesied we would do? After all, the wicked have already declared they will do as prophecy said they would. Now this next article is titled, "National Church to Open Sunday 2011 Promo." September 18th, 2011 is National Back to Church Sunday. Grace Fellowship Ministries at Wesley Chapel will be participating in this national campaign this year. Now, as we see more politicians speaking as preachers today, we are sure to see more preachers speaking as politicians. The mixing of church and state is not only Rome's expressed and often written desire, it's prophetic fulfillment for our day. As they grow bolder in their religio-political stance, they will push their Vatican dogma from nation to nation. Then, as the calamities grow, they will then proclaim Sunday as a way to bring help from on high that will stop the calamities, when in fact, that is exactly what brings his wrath upon them. For they boldly deny his law. The children of God will proclaim on that day, "It is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law." That's, of course, Psalms 119, verse 126. This next article is titled, "FBI Wants Businesses Watching for Customers Paying with Cash." Just days after the White House announced a community-based approach to combating terrorism in the United States, the FBI and other agencies are asking managers of surplus stores to spy on their customers, watching whether they pay in cash, make extreme religious statements, or purchase products such as waterproof matches. Now, not many surplus stores will comply with this, of course, but some will. Soon, cash will become obsolete when they play this political game up as much as they can. Rome cannot enforce the mark of the beast when it comes to removing the people's ability to buy and sell, if cash is still available, so keep your eyes on this. Right before they completely remove cash from society, watch how the media starts to report on how some are using cash to purchase weapons or other dangerous items. So, they will make it appear to be in the people's best interest that cash be removed. Some will doubt this can occur because we need cash to survive, but I say to you, open your eyes. We haven't needed cash now for almost a decade. The method by which to successfully remove cash is already set in place. The credit cards, direct deposit, auto pay options on the banks, they're already using this, and they're ready and waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is all they're waiting for. Removing cash is inevitable if their plans are going to work. Still, as Christians, we are not to worry. We have been promised that our bread and waters shall be sure in Isaiah 33:16. Now, this next article is titled, "Christian Wants Atheist Registry." Florida pastor Michael Stahl has suggested that an organization and website be created that would keep track of known atheists. The website would list by city and state all atheists with their photos and some personal information such as place of business. It would not include a physical address, which seems to contradict one of the main purposes of the site. The 501c3 pastors now have the official capacity to lobby law since Bush signed them in as government agencies on March 7, 2006. See more info about this on my 501c3 page on the website, or the Image of the Beast Made Alive page on the website. Now, this pastor is merely flexing his newfound muscles. That's all he's doing. The other toss of the coin in this is how they will use such registries against remnant Christians who go into hiding when the mark of the beast is enforced. This next article is titled, "National Back to Church Sunday Set for September 18th. Back to Church Sunday, a national movement to reverse declining church attendance and encourage former churchgoers to rediscover church, will be celebrated September 18th across the country. Since its inception, more than 3.5 million invitations from over 7,400 churches have been extended to unchurched people to attend the special service. Okay, one can see this is stage one for Antichrist to get as many of the unchurched citizens used to attending church. Stage two, of course, will be to convince everyone that attending church on Sunday will stop the ever-increasing calamities. When will that day come? Well, as soon as Rome is sure they can control every citizen across the nation. Of course, they won't be able to control the elect. When they discover how we refuse to obey man over God, the laws will be put in place that prophecy calls the enforcement of the mark of the beast. All right, this next one's titled, "Obama Tears Up Constitution." In his 2 years and 9 months in office, Barack Obama has compiled a spectacular record of noncompliance with the Constitution. Here are just some of the ways his administration has failed to execute the laws while using raw, unauthorized power. Now, what many are aware of is not only has Rome stated in writing that they, the Catholics, must penetrate wherever possible in the administration of civil affairs, all Catholics should do all in their power to cause the Constitution of states and legislation to be modeled on the principles of the true church. And this is the encyclical of Leo XIII. Now, Rome has caused the change of most constitutions of Middle Eastern countries all of Europe, and now she's focusing on America. If you look around the world now, you'll see that those that refuse to change their constitutions are presently at war, or about to be at war if they continue to refuse. Why? Well, unless the constitutions are changed, they have no legal way to enforce the Sunday laws. And by the way, this changing of the Constitution was prophesied to happen. See the URL on your screen for more information. This next article is titled, Jail or Church? Starting next week, the program will allow a city judge to sentence misdemeanor offenders to work off their sentences in jail and pay a fine, or go to church every Sunday for a year. Offenders who select church can pick the place of worship, but must check in weekly with the pastor and the police department. Now, think about this. Forcing people to go to church is a bold violation of both a biblical doctrine and constitutional law regarding the separation of church and state. But then this is exactly what prophecy says the Roman Catholic Church will force all nations to do in our day. That being said, are you ready for what's about to happen? Are you sure? This next article is titled 10 Commandments of Zambia. For the first time, this country has a Catholic president, and our government will support the church, Seta said, recalling that the nation was predominantly Catholic. Now, the problem with his statement is, number one, the commandments of the Roman Catholic Church are not the commandments of the Bible. And number two, the Vatican is home to the Antichrist. Still, this was prophesied, and this event does in fact declare we are that much closer to home when governments openly declare their loyalty to the Antichrist. Rest assured, this will cause true Christians in Zambia to be persecuted in the coming days. Okay, this next article is titled, Scott Misses Game Because of Faith. Murray refuses to play on Sundays, saying it would go against his religious principles that came to the fore when he was recovering from injury in 2005. Ian Murray is discounted because it's Sunday. In years past, this would never be an issue. But in today's media, wherein Rome needs all the help they can get, one can rest assured any celebrity choosing to keep the Roman Sabbath holy, as if it was the Christian Sabbath, is bound to make news. All right, this last article is titled Hand of God in Quake, Retribution for D.C. Politics. As the swaying tremors of an earthquake rattled up the East Coast yesterday, so too did split-second explanations for the jolts that shook the nation's capital. Was it a terrorist attack, a sign of the apocalypse, a wake-up call from God? Now, some may say this is a good thing, but keep in mind who is preaching in the articles. These are authors, preachers, and other people that simply don't walk with God as they should. Seeing how they are already blind to His will due to their denial of His truth, they will naturally come up with unbiblical ways to fix the problem as prophecy predicts. Since they don't understand biblical jurisprudence in the first place, Rome's suggestion of Sunday laws will be seen as a good idea to them. Prophecy says they will look to God to stop the calamity, so articles like this will become more and more frequent as we get closer to them actually enforcing the mark of the Roman beast.
This Friday night brings a different kind of Sabbath. There is a movement to just give it a rest, and it being your BlackBerry, Facebook, Twitter. Can you live without emails for a day? The National Day of Unplugging urges the overstressed and overworked to log off and tune out technology for 24 hours.
Permanently, you're always connected in one form or another. So
that's the idea behind this, basically.
Yeah, just to sort of take a step back, and I mean it really came out of recognition that as I was spending more and more time with technology, it was just getting harder and harder to connect to people, and I was aware of my attention span becoming shorter and so on. So yeah, it just it evolved out of that, I guess.
And Gretchen, 66% of Americans own a cell phone. It's a huge convenience, and it's not always a negative either. I mean, when we talk about us needing to connect to each other more, people do use their cell phones to, send photos or text messages or whatever of their children, and it does keep us connected in a way too. I mean, it's not all bad, right?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Technology, it's a good servant but a bad master, and it can give you wonderful access to more people. You can keep strong ties with other people, and
So Judith, you know, it's kind of the perfect weekend to talk about it, Easter weekend, and you know, we just had Passover, right? So let's talk to me about the Sabbath, what it means to you, just religion aside, what it means to you.
The Sabbath is two things to me. One, it's this incredible idea. It's really one of the great ideas in human history. It's transformed the world. It's affected the way we've lived for thousands of years. And I was interested in thinking about it, studying it, learning its history before it kind of disappeared from our lives. So that was the big idea that I had about the Sabbath. And then what it meant to me personally was it was a way to get outside of the work-a-day, driven, careerist life that I was leading.
You know, it's interesting because you talk about, you know, Christians, any religion, people have these moments where they feel like they're searching for something, right? And then it can be even harder now, as you say, you know, we're connected. I'm showing my BlackBerry and my iPhone, and you're always connected. And sometimes, do you think it's always about religion, or is it just about connecting to source, connecting to family, pulling back and not being so involved in the rat race?
Don, that is exactly the point. That's exactly the point of what I discovered about the Sabbath, which is that it is a really good idea for people, for families, for communities to set aside a structured time in which to connect with each other. And that is at the heart what the Sabbath does. I say we're sort of we're driven by time rather than driving it ourselves, and it's making us sick. The idea of the Sabbath is not just that all people have the right not to work, which, by the way, was a radical and new idea when it was first conceived and written down in the Fourth Commandment. It's not only that. It's that all people have the right to work, not to work, at the same time, so that they can be together. And one of the things that's happening to us is that we're getting on these very different schedules, and we're having a very hard time figuring out how to come together. And what the Sabbath does is it creates this situation in which there's just a structured period in which we can come together.
So is this the first step? And maybe that is the answer to my next question. I was going to say, what's the first step if someone's watching and they say, you know what, I need to do that?
Basically, the first step is to do it yourself. You bring it into your life and try to get your family to do it with you. But one of the things I argue in the book is one of the ideas, the political ideas sort of embedded in the Sabbath, is the idea that as a society we have the right to take control of our time and say maybe as a democratic society we want to decide to bring back some rules about what can and cannot be done one day a week. And we might want to start thinking about ways to encourage people not to work on that day.
Ah, very good advice.
Benedict XVI kicked off the week of prayer for Christian unity during his Sunday Angelus.
Preghiamo con maggiore intensità.
The Pope also said that Christian unity was more necessary than ever, given the turbulent times the world is living in. During the past few years, Catholic-Orthodox relations have improved. The future will depend in large part on the next Patriarch of Moscow, the head of the largest Orthodox community in the world, who will be chosen next week. The leaders of the Orthodox faith will probably meet later this year for the Pan-Orthodox Council on the Greek island of Rhodes. Catholic relations with Protestant communities are much more complicated, particularly when it comes to issues such as ordaining female priests and gays.
Good morning. I'm Charles Osgood, and this is Sunday morning. We're throwing ourselves a birthday party this morning, and all of you are invited. You see, as of this week, Sunday morning is 30 and counting. A mile. Whether you're planning your Sunday brunch, taking a Sunday drive, or watching Sunday morning, chances are you have your own Sunday ritual. It's the first day of the week, and for many, it's their favorite day.
I don't think Sunday will ever be like every other day of the week. It's a special day, and it will remain a special day.
Author Stephen Miller. What's the best thing about Sunday to you?
It's a day when you don't have to do things, when you can just lie around, see people if you want, or not see people.
And seeing people is a Sunday activity that Americans enjoy. According to a recent survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 40% of us socialize on Sundays. But twice as many, 8 out of 10, sit back and watch TV, an average of 4 hours. And then there's church. 1 in 4 attends religious services, and about that same number goes shopping.
Here begins something new.
But when Sunday morning first went on the air in 1979, in many parts of the country, it was impossible to shop on Sundays. Stores were required to be closed, says Stephen Miller, who's written a book on the subject. Americans once had a very narrow choice of permissible Sunday activities.
There were so many arguments in the United States, especially in the 19th century. Sunday legislation was the second most debated subject after slavery because there were different opinions about what you could or couldn't do on Sunday.
Those opinions began with the Puritans, who settled in New England in the 1630s. They called it strict Sunday observance. Sunday was a day for church-going, and blue laws made almost everything else illegal.
There were Connecticut blue laws in the 18th century which said that you could not kiss your baby, you could not tell a joke. There was absolutely no frivolity on Sunday, and you could not play an instrument.
Except maybe the organ at church or something?
Yes,
like that.
Except for hymns. There was a French soldier stationed in Boston during the Revolutionary War, and he started playing the flute. He was arrested. No flute playing on the Sabbath.
Some blue laws still exist today, mostly to regulate alcohol sales. But Miller says Americans have come a long way from the age of strict observance.
Gradually in the 20th century, all the things that we associate with Sunday now started. So sports started, Sunday football, Sunday drive. The Sunday paper with the comics and the crosswords became a major American phenomenon.
We continue to relax in front of a Sunday newspaper. 115 million people in America still read a Sunday newspaper.
Janice Kaplan is the editor of Parade magazine. For almost 70 years now, it's been a Sunday institution, appearing in over 450 Sunday newspapers across the country with a parade of covers to show for it. Parade, says Kaplan, would not be parade on any other day of the week.
The Sunday paper is so invested with tradition. Everybody in the family has that special section that they want to read, and everybody pulls the one that means something to them.
One favorite section is Sunday sports, two words that for millions of Americans have become synonymous with each other. Sports, like the newspapers that cover them, are now a firmly established Sunday tradition.
It was no small thing for Super Bowl to become an adjective for Sunday.
Historian Craig Harleen has written about how professional football became a weekly ritual in America.
Now you look at the Super Bowl and it's this odd combination of religion and striptease show and who knows what else. It's all kinds of things going on at once. But certainly it's bigger than football. It's about an American civil religion.
Which makes sense, says Harleen, because football would not have been accepted on Sundays had it not first assumed a religious significance starting in the late 19th century.
Most Americans consider themselves Christians, and so they had to find a way to reconcile that. And the way they did that was, this is a different day. Sunday is a special day. Most civilizations celebrate their holiest days with sports. Why wouldn't that be true in America as well?
And so Sunday became a day for games and celebrations. But not for everyone. There was nothing festive about the song Gloomy Sunday, recorded by Billie Holiday in 1941. Stephen Miller says it reflects a larger theme in popular music. Sunday as a dark day.
Gloomy Sunday, with shadows I spend it all.
I began my study with the song Gloomy Sunday. That was popular in the 1930s. I wondered whether people are very gloomy on Sunday compared to other days of the week.
You talk about being alone on a Saturday night. That's sad. Being alone on a Sunday morning, that's tragic.
Well, I woke up Sunday morning.
Music journalist Fred Goodman says some songs about Sunday sadness focus on failed expectations for our day off.
And the beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert.
To me, one of the great examples is Chris Christopherson's song Sunday Morning Coming Down. It's about a guy who's down on his luck. Well, what do most people do on Sunday morning? They're with their family, they're going to church, whatever. This guy's like, sleeping off a drunk on the sidewalk. He's got nothing.
Therapists have been listening to the real-life Sunday blues for years. In fact, Sunday actually has a psychiatric disorder named after it. Historian Craig Harleen.
There's the famous diagnosis in the early 20th century is Sunday neurosis. The person who couldn't bear the coming of Sunday because it threw them out of their routine. Sunday is timeless and it's open. There isn't that schedule that you have the rest of the week, and some people can't bear that.
Not writer Judith Shulevitz. In an upcoming book, she argues just the opposite. She wants to keep Sundays timeless. In a world of 24/7 commerce, she's pushing for a return to laws that would shut down businesses one day a week.
If everybody has to stop working, and they have to sort of pay attention to their family, to themselves, to their community.
In this campaign, where do you even start, since it is so?
I don't pretend to have the answer in terms of legislation. I just start by trying to point out the benefits. Let's remember the Sabbath. Let's remember what it did for us in the past, and let's think about what it could do for us in the future.
It's fast becoming like other days because of the commercialization of Sunday. We're sort of on all the time now. And what effect does this have on our psyche? So I think we are losing something.
Which brings us back to the Puritans of the 1630s. Their measures may now seem extreme. But what if they were actually onto something?
Gloomy Sunday, with shadows I spend it all. My heart and I have decided to end it all.
Next, here come the Sons.
On August 26, 2006, the Orlando Sentinel ran a story about U.S. Congress Representative Katherine Harris, a Republican from Florida, who claimed that God did not intend for the United States to be a nation of secular laws, and that separation of church and state is a lie, we have been told, to keep religious people out of politics. If you're not electing Christians, she said, then in essence you are going to legislate sin. Harris told this to interviewers from the Florida Baptist Witness, the weekly journal of the Florida Baptist State Convention. Harris said her religious beliefs animate everything she does, including her votes in Congress. Harris, said the Sentinel, has always professed a deep Christian faith, but she has rarely expressed such a fervent evangelical perspective publicly. Though some criticized Harris as having a notion that politicians have been chosen or anointed, she was firm. We have to have the faithful in government, because that's God's will. Separating religion and politics is so wrong because God is the one who chooses our rulers, she said. And if we were the ones not actively involved in electing those godly men and women, then we're going to have a nation of secular laws. That's not what our founding fathers intended, and that certainly isn't what God intended. Let us think about what Representative Harris said. In her view, conservative Christians should be the ones in public office and should make the laws of the land. While this sounds good to Christians, it is important to understand prophecy. Prophecy tells us that when Christians gain control of the government, there will be oppressive enactments to form the image of the beast and eventually enact Sunday laws against God's true commandment-keeping people. Last November, Katherine Harris tried to leave the House of Representatives and join the U.S. Senate. Her election bid for the Senate was defeated, and she is no longer in Congress, even as a representative. Perhaps the angels are holding back the winds of strife. But this whole episode shows us that there is an undercurrent among some who to increase the profile of religious people in high positions with rather radical views, in some cases. They are working to elect people as rulers who will enact religious laws, which will inevitably involve Sunday laws. The present, and I believe temporary, return to democratic control of the U.S. Congress involves issues that revolve around President Bush's handling of the Iraq War, for the most part. It may also partly include some of the constitutional changes that he has made, almost unilaterally since September 11, 2001. But frankly, the American people are not very concerned about the erosion of their Constitution. They are primarily unhappy with body bags coming home from Iraq with no end in sight.
Is a Seventh-day Adventist pastor preached to a huge TV audience that the God of the Muslim and the God of the Christian are one and the same. In the following video, not only does Pastor Dwight Nelson of the Pioneer Memorial SDA Church state we shouldn't look to Rome to research Islam, he also declares on 3ABN back on December 11th of 2010 in a sermon titled Stars Still Rising Over Islam that Allah is the same God of the Christians and the Quran holds the same truths as the Bible. Now, as you watch this pastor preach the Quran is holy, regardless of the fact it states clearly in the Quran that Christians must die, and over 200,000 Christians are being martyred each and every year by Muslims right now, this SDA pastor actually preached we should worship Allah along with them. Notice the picture on your screen right now. That's actually Seventh-day Adventist students bowing to Allah in a Muslim mosque in Arusha. I share this picture to illustrate this isn't just one pastor doing this in the SDA Church. This photo can be found in the summer issue of Andrews University 2009 Focus magazine on page 21. You can also view or download this picture by copying the link on your screen right now. The fact this happened back in 2009 proves this is nothing new for the SDA Church. As far as we know, they have now been preaching a pro-Islam message in their churches and universities for at least 2 years. Keep in mind, it has also been at least 2 years since the Vatican has been performing an ecumenical push with the Islamic people as well. With that being said, let's take a look at the video.
That if you want to know the truth about Islam, don't go to Rome. Go to Bethlehem instead. I recently listened to a series of CDs, lectures given by the late Dr. Robert Darnell, a member of our community of faith, an expert in Islamic studies, an anthropologist, in which he carefully chronicled how, in fact, the Quran teaches the seeds of every divine truth that you and I embrace. The seeds are all there. It was Darnell's lifetime mission and conviction to cultivate those seeds in dialogue with the children of the East. And in an hour of history, when the West is turning against those children, ought we not to be the first to raise up our voices in their behalf? Think. Why shouldn't we? Or what if? And by the way, the story of Christmas would hardly let us do otherwise, would it? What if the Spirit, the mighty Spirit of Allah, by the way, I got some letters from viewers after that last teaching, and one viewer said, don't you know that the name Allah is a name for Lucifer? Oh, I hope you never embrace that. Allah, listen carefully now, Allah is closer to Elohim, the Hebrew name for God, than is our English word God. In fact, hold on to your seats. The English name God is a Nordic pagan God. We've taken a pagan God's name and we said, that's the name of our God. And we all call him God. That's a pagan. It's a Nordic pagan myth. So don't you ever get pushed into the corner where you're saying, Allah is a demonic name. Allah is the name of the living God. Allah is the creator of the universe. Allah is the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ishmael, Jethro, Job, and even Balaam.
The Seventh-day Adventist preacher you're about to see proclaim Allah, the God of the Muslims, to be the same God of the Christian, is named John Carter.
First, may Allah, God, the undisputed and incontestable Lord of the heavens and the earth, and all that is found between and beyond it, bless you and your family with the best of this world and the hereafter, for your advocacy of reconciliation among mankind and their respective religions. That's nice, isn't it? It's a beautiful prayer. Thank you. Now, you know, Allah is the same God that the Christian worships, I believe. In the Bible that is used by people who speak in those Middle Eastern countries, the word for God is Allah. And so obviously the person who is sending me this letter is a person who follows Islam. Okay, secondly,
Now, my dear brethren, we have viewed all these things. Now, the soon falling of the latter rain. And what can we say about this? We can only declare this and make it emphatically clear. Let us hear what the spirit of prophecy had to tell us of the soon falling of the latter rain. She says, the time of test is just upon us. That's the Sunday law. For the Lord cry of the third angel has already begun in the revelation of the righteousness of Christ, the sin-pardoning Redeemer. That is First Selected Messages, page 363. That is Selected Messages, book 1, page 363, 1892. Then she says, in Great Controversy, page 464, before the final visitation of God's judgment upon the earth, there will be among the people of the Lord such a revival of primitive godliness as has not been witnessed since apostolic times. The Spirit and power of God will be poured out upon His people. Now, what do we get from these statements? That the latter rain will come just as a Sunday law is about to implement it. And that as God's judgment is soon to come upon the face of the earth, God will have a people among Adventists. The true Adventists will be shown, and they will have primitive godliness, even as it was in apostolic times. And they will receive the latter rain. Again, she says, in Selected Messages, book 1, page 191, or Last Day Events, page 193, she says, the latter rain will come, and the blessing of God will fill every soul that is purified from every defilement. It is our work today to yield our souls to Christ, that we may be fitted for the time of refreshing from the presence of the Lord, fitted for the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Now, my dear brethren, how will we know that this latter rain is coming? She emphasized, it is understood because what? The Lord cry of the third angel has already begun in the revelation of the righteousness of Christ that was sin pardoned Redeemer. Brethren, the Lord cry of the third angel's message, as explained by Sister White, is revealed in the understanding of what? The righteousness of Christ, the sin pardoned Redeemer. Let me emphasize that statement by giving you this quotation from Testimonies to Ministers, page 91 and 92. Sister White says this: the Lord in His great mercy sent a most precious message to His people through Elders Wagner and Jones. This message was to bring more prominently before the world the uplifted Savior, the sacrifice for the sins of the whole world. It presented justification through faith in the surety. It invited the people to receive the righteousness of Christ, which is made manifest in obedience to all the commandments of God. Many had lost sight of Jesus. They needed to have their eyes directed to His divine person, His merits, and His changeless love for the human family. All power is given to His hands, for that He may dispense rich gifts unto men, imparting the priceless gift of His own righteousness to the helpless human agent. Then she emphasized, this is the message that God commanded to be given to the world. It is the third angel's message, which is to be proclaimed with a loud voice and attended with the outpouring of His Spirit in a large measure. So, my dear people, the time of test is upon us. A son of the Lord is soon to come, and as a result, he says, the Lord cry of the third angel message has begun in the proclamation of the knowledge of the righteousness of Christ. It is called righteousness by faith. That message began in 1888, and she shows then therefore that message must come back again to the church, and that when that message begins to go forth, it is because the end is soon to come. You have just seen evidences that the end is soon to come. It means that message, or the message of righteousness by faith, which will prepare God's people through the latter rain to proclaim the final message, has already begun to be proclaimed. But that message was sadly rejected by the Seventh Adventist Church in 1888. And today, the church is in continued apostasy because of rejection. But the hope is given that God has a people who has not bowed down their knees to Baal. That the true remnant of Seventh Adventists, the little company who is sighing and crying for the abominations done in the land, but more especially are their prayers arising on behalf of the church, because its members are going after the man of the world. Are you a part of a little company? Have you accepted the message of righteousness by faith, which will make you be obedient to God's commandments and give you the faith that will make you overcome the world, overcome Satan, and overcome your personal idol values of sin? May God help you that you receive this message of righteousness by faith that gives you holiness and righteousness. It's a sad thing that the Adventist organization is going into apostasy, and proof that God has not given up, and that this message of Christ and His righteousness will go forth. Sister White says this. I'm quoting from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 209 and 210. She says, the leaven of godliness has not entirely lost its power. At the time when the danger and depression of the church are greatest, the little company who are the real true Adventists, who are standing in the light of the message of righteousness by faith, will be sighing and crying for the abominations that are done in the land, but more especially will their prayers arise on behalf of the church, the majority who is in apostasy. That's our statement. Because its members are doing after the manner of the world. The earnest prayer of this faithful few will not be in vain. So there will be a little company of true Seventh Adventists. And it says this little company who are standing in the light of the message of righteousness by faith, who will receive the outpouring of the latter rain and do a great work. Sister White says, concerning the message of righteousness by faith, that it was rejected. I quote from, written from Australia, Melbourne, May the 9th, 1892. Okay? It says, I saw that Jones and Wagner had their counterpart in Joshua and Caleb. As the children of Israel stoned the spies with literal stones, you have stoned these brethren with stones of sarcasm and ridicule. I saw that you willfully reject what you know to be truth, just because it was too humiliating to your dignity. I saw some of you in your tents, mimicking and making all manner of fun of these two brethren. I also saw that if you had accepted their message, we would have been in the kingdom 2 years from that date. Now we have to go back into the wilderness and stay 40 years. And that is symbolical, my dear people. So we are seeing that indeed this message is needed by the Seventh Adventist Church. And that indeed it was rejected. That's what we are seeing for sure. My dear brethren, proof that this message indeed has to come again. Sister White says this from a letter called Taking Up a Reproach by Ellen White. Most time it is called that this was an apocryphal statement, but it's a true statement. Here are the contents of it. Taking Up a Reproach by Ellen White. She says, in 1888, in the General Conference held at Minneapolis, Minnesota, the angel of Revelation 18:1 came down to do his work and was ridiculed, criticized, and rejected. And when the message he brings again swells into a loud cry, it will again be ridiculed, spoken against, and be rejected by the majority. The majority of Seventh-day Adventists will not accept this message. That's why this message has to go to the world. And this is why Sister White says this in Review and Herald, November 22, 1892. The time of test is just upon us, for the Lord cry of the third angel has already begun, and the revelation of the righteousness of Christ, the sin-pardoning Redeemer. This is the beginning of the light of the angel whose glory shall fill the whole earth. Indeed, America, the crisis in America is coming forward. We shall soon see great changes in this land of so-called liberty. For fallen Protestantism, the evangelical religions in America will turn and do great evil against God's people and his law. Revelation chapter 13, it says, and I beheld another beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as was not worshipped the image of the beast should be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Indeed, my dear brethren, we are soon to see final events taking place in this country. The voice of God speaks through his messenger, Ellen G. White, to Seventh-day Adventists. She says, quoting from Testimonies Volume 5, page 452, she says, the Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whither the undercurrent is tending. Its professions are mild and apparently Christian, but when it shall speak, it will reveal the spirit of the dragon. Testimonies Volume 6, page 18. As America, the land of religious liberty, shall unite with the papacy in enforcing their conscience and compelling men to honor the false Sabbath, the people of every country on the globe will be led to follow her example. You see, people, terrible things are taking place. She says, great controversy, page 635. When the protection of human laws shall be withdrawn from those who honor the law of God, there will be in different lands a simultaneous movement for the destruction. She says, when our nation shall so observe the principles of its government as to enact a Sunday law, Protestantism will in this act join hands with popery. It will be nothing else than giving life to the tyranny, which has long been eagerly watching its opportunity to spring again into action. Testimonies, Volume 5, page 712, page 712. Bible Commentary, Volume 7, page 977. When our nation in its legislative councils shall enact laws to bind the consciences of men in regard to their religious privileges, enforcing Sunday observance, and bringing oppressive power to bear against those who keep the 7-day Sabbath, the law of God will, to all intents and purposes, be made void in our land, and national apostasy is the signal for national ruin. She says, Testimonies, Volume 5, page 753. Satan is at work through human agencies. Those who are making an effort to change the Constitution and secure a law enforcing Sunday observance little realize what will be the result. A crisis is just upon us. Testimonies, Volume 5, page 449. Church and state are now making preparations for the future conflict. Protestants are working in disguise to bring Sunday to the front, as did the Romanists. So you see, my dear people, the so-called Protestants in Ellen White's day is the modern day evangelicals who have fallen Protestantism. They are the false prophet, and they are working to create a Sunday law by influencing legislation and making emphasis of the importance of Sunday laws, morality, to change this nation to speak as a dragon. May God help us that these things will cause us to be astir, to accept Christ as our true righteousness in our hearts, to make us sin-free from all sin, that we may receive the latter rain and go forth and preach the final message to this earth. Probation is soon to close. I'm quoting from Selected Messages, Book 2, page 81, 1890, or Last Day Events, page 227. Ellen White says this: The Lord had shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, for it is to be the test for the people of God by which their eternal destiny will be decided. What is your decision today? Will you make up your mind to be a true 7-day Adventist? The crisis is soon to come. 5 seconds to midnight. The final crisis on this earth. Amen. Thank you very much. May God richly bless you. In Jesus' holy name. Amen. "5 seconds to midnight of Earth's final crisis. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth the distress of nations with perplexities, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts feeling them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory."
Tusia Multimedia Ministry. The loud cry of the third angel's message to the world.